How often is it that you hear about various legends and myths in regards to cartoons and other children's shows? Likely chances it's quite often, seeing as how anyone with a rather sick sense of humor, or complete and utter sadism, would want to do anything that they possibly could try and do to prevent and destroy our childhood memories. Out of all the shows in the world that tend to get the most amount of legends and other stories dedicated to it, it would most likely be Barney the Dinosaur. Think about it for a second. People tend to make a whole lot of various stories and the like just to try and get people to either hate the show with their entire being, whether it's through online horror stories, parody music videos, or disturbing artwork, or basically just do whatever they can to just make it seem so ridiculous that nobody would want to watch it at all. Needless to say, Barney has had a lot more shit thrown at them than any other show out there. With that said though, there probably was this one time where Barney really wound up going through a lot of issues, nearly going through cancellation because of this specific issue that had happened. And that involves a specific episode that had been taken off the air that most of you probably aren't very familiar with. The episode was entitled Barney's Spooky Cemetery Stories. Now, for anybody out there who has absolutely no idea about the episode, which should be a majority of you, let me explain. The original concept of this episode was made as a children's Halloween special that was supposed to be about Barney narrating over and giving his own interpretations of at least 3 classical horror stories: Dracula, the Mummy, Frankenstein, pretty much those things, in a more darker kind of manner, but still light enough for the kids to be shown. However, during the production of the episode, there was a manufacturing mistake that I went on during the mailing process, when the tapes get sent to the main animation studios for cleanup and final airing, and the episode was sent over to a third-party company by the name of Squished Bugs Entertainment. Now, Squished Bugs Entertainment was a relatively new company at the time, who wound up closing the doors for good, for reasons that will be explained at the end of this post. And their main director for the company, Angelo Daster, had originally planned for the small company to be an adult animated studio that was based around making adult-oriented animations for various stores and other kind of shops that delved into that kind of thing. Now, when they had accidentally received the Barney episode by mail, this for some reason had triggered a burst of inspiration from Angelo Daster, who, after viewing the tape, decided that the episode would be their first production. So the animation staff and crew of Squishbugs Entertainment immediately went to work on making their episode as screwed up as possible, before sending it back to the major PBS studios for airing. When the directors and staff had finally gotten the copy of the tape from the third-party company, who to this very day refuses to even admit that they had anything to do with it, which was a big lie, there was much confusion in regard to why the tape had taken so long, given the fact that the company didn't even bother putting their name there. Surely enough, the episode had originally been planned to be cancelled due to how late the airing time would have been, but instead decided to air it anyway, without further checking the contents held within the tape. Needless to say, once the realization had hit everybody about the contents of the tape via angry mails, and of course the fact that it was not exactly up to par with typical kid show standards, the episode was quickly pulled from television around 8 minutes into the broadcast, and a regular episode of Barney and Friends was aired in its place. As for the whereabouts of this episode, minus a few recorded tapes that seemed to be floating around, or in this case lying around in basements, storage units, and the like, you would likely not be able to even find anything of the matter, even on the internet, both on surface and in deep. However, luckily for all of you, I had managed to get my hands on one of these tapes, and have viewed the contents in its entirety a good few times before having to return it to my friend, who unfortunately is now long deceased, and the entirety of their items has since been thrown out. So while I can't exactly show any footage or images of the episode in question, I certainly can describe the contents of this episode, which isn't really much, but it might help quell some curiosity. The episode begins with the usual Barney and Friends theme song, as per usual. Once the theme song ends, the scene then fades out to show the inside of the schoolhouse, with fog machines spewing out fog, and shots of artificial lightning illuminating the area off-screen. The typical Halloween-esque music is playing in the background before finally a CGI bat flies across the screen and towards the middle of said fog before a flash of smoke bursts from the bat and Barney the dinosaur appears. He's still in his usual purple and green form, however, the only thing making it different was a small cape wrapped around his large body, fake fangs protruding from either side of his mouth, and followed up with a Dracula necklace to wrap everything up. Barney then proceeded to walk down the aisle of fog, and then say in a rather bad Dracula impersonation, "Well, good evening, boys and girls. It's me, Barney the Vampire Dinosaur, and today I have a wonderful and spooky tale of horror to share today on this wonderful night." Barney then proceeds to clap his hands twice before a puff of smoke appears in his hands, which forms into a large red-bound book. Barney opens up the book and then sits down onto a large barrel and begins saying, "Today's first tale of fright, boys and girls, is the tale of Dracula." Once Barney introduces the storyline, the camera pans over towards the moonlit window in the background, before fading out to show a now empty schoolhouse decorated with jack-o'-lanterns. Then, in nearly an instant, a few of the school children, all aged around 7 to 9, walk into the room with large grins on their faces. They're all holding large buckets and bags filled to the rim with various candy bars and other treats and the such. "Wow, I didn't think we'd get so much candy this year," one of the boys, a young 8-year-old dressed as a pirate, said. "Yeah, it's a good thing Barney got us this cool map to find the best houses for Halloween this year," a girl, one of the eldest ones, around 9.5 years old, dressed as a witch, said as she placed her candy down near a table in one of the lit jack-o'-lanterns. "Speaking of Barney, has anybody seen him yet?" another boy asked, this one dressed as a wizard. The kids all start to think for a bit, wondering where the purple dinosaur had been all this time. That is, until the eldest girl decided to go out and see if she could go and find Barney. The other kids for some reason seem rather hesitant to let her go out there by herself, but they all wind up relenting and then let her go. The scene then cut to show the outside of the schoolhouse, with the same fog effects layered over most of the ground, making it rather hard to see the ground below. Carefully, the girl makes her way down the steps and then begins making her way towards the playground. The scene itself is a bit eerie, if anything a bit too eerie for a show like that. The young girl herself even looks as though she's freaking out a little bit by the surroundings that she's walking through, but continues on. She then starts to call out Barney's name, in an attempt to try and find him. However, there's no sound nor response. She calls out a second time, but again, no response. She calls out once more, still the same response. That's when the girl winds up turning around and walking down a pathway, and then soon bumps into a large shed-like structure. It's completely broken down and nearly crumbling into pieces. But despite that, the girl goes towards the door and opens it up. As she walks in, she notices a large shape in the back of the shed, which the camera focuses on, but never really reveals what it is. "Barney, are you here?" the young girl calls out. The only response given was a single shift from the large figure standing at the back window, which only furthers up the tension going on in this episode. The girl then makes her way towards to a small lamp and turns it on, rather slowly. Upon turning the lamp on, yes, it did work. The entire shed was illuminated with light. The figure that had been seen in the back of the shed was now completely and utterly empty. The scene then cut back to the girl, with Barney standing right behind her with the same outfit on as in the beginning of the episode. Fun little fact, the scene actually managed to make me jump out of my seat the first time I had seen it. "I see you," Barney says. The young girl then lets out a small scream before turning around and quickly giving a sigh of relief. "Oh, whew, Barney, it's you," the girl says, now panting a bit. Barney's full figure is then shown in its usual detail. Barney simply giggles a bit before giving the young girl a hug. "Happy Halloween, Samantha," Barney begins. Are you ready for the Halloween party that I have set up for all of us? Samantha simply nods, and then begins to make her way towards the exit of the shed and motions for Barney to follow her, which he does without saying a word. The scene then fades in and on itself, before finally coming back to show Barney and Samantha making their way back into the schoolhouse. The other kids proceed to greet and give Barney a large hug, and then proceed to start asking about the Halloween party that was going to happen soon. Barney simply smiles at them and tells them that they were already at the party. The kids look a bit confused for a bit, but soon they all kind of figure it all out. At least, sooner or later. Specifically with all the jack-o'-lanterns and everything lit around the entire place, it would only seem normal, I guess, for a show like this, to make that the party destination. Now this is where the episode took a much more messed up turn. That was the reason why the episode was cancelled in the first place. There really isn't too much to be said due to the footage only lasting up to 8 minutes during the broadcast, and being completely and utterly cut off afterwards and never shown again, but I will try my best to make sure of it, to describe everything as best as I can. During the supposed Halloween party, Barney didn't really do anything. Well, he did talk to a few of the kids and drink a little bit of punch, but other than that, he didn't do anything else. He didn't dance, he didn't play around, he just stood there, staring at the kids with a rather creepy and menacing looking grin on his face. After about a minute of this, Barney starts to slowly turn around until his entire back was now facing the children. None of the kids noticed this at first, that is until Samantha winds up pointing out that Barney was facing away from them. Samantha then makes her way towards Barney, who was now starting to shake slightly. The girl asked, "Hey, Barney, are you okay? Do you need something?" Barney asked.
I want to suck your blood.
Barney whispers. "What was that, Barney?" Samantha asked. At this point, Barney turned around, only to reveal a rather fucked up sight. Barney then wound up saying in a rather crazy manner,
I want to suck your blood.
Barney's eyes were completely yellow. His pupils were literally going all over the place. Barney's mouth hung open, with the sharp fangs overpowering the rest of his teeth, which had never once been shown on the show. His clothing also looked a lot paler in comparison. The scene cut back to the other kids, who now looked completely horrified at what they were looking at. Then, without warning, Barney proceeded to jump on top of Samantha, and then bite down into her neck, spilling fake blood all over the place as he bit down on her neck over and over and over again while the other kids tried to leave the building. That is, until Barney wound up getting up and lunging right at them. However, just before he could do any other damage, the tape immediately cut out to show the usual rainbow bars that various broadcast interruptions show, before a simple text-to-speech voice said, "We at PBS Kids would like to apologize for the inconvenience. Barney and friends will be returning shortly." After that, a regular episode of Barney and Friends aired in its place. Now, like I mentioned above, there would be an explanation for what happened afterwards. After the whole incident with the episode being pulled from its line, PBS Studios immediately began launching an investigation regarding the episode's whereabouts, which is how they had somehow managed to find the company Squished Bugs Entertainment. What they did to them was not very pretty. They completely and utterly sued them into non-existence. No joke. If you even try looking for their name, you will not find it. Or if you do happen to find something, you're likely going to wind up finding a place using the same kind of name. But my god, did these people seriously want to do everything in their power to make sure of it that this company never once saw the light of day again? Hell, they even went so far to sit there and have the producer of this demented Barney episode arrested and jailed for at least a good couple of years for copyright infringement. After that, once all that drama went by, Everything else went by as normal. The complaints that originally came into the studio quickly died down, and the show resumed the way that it was, and it was supposed to, with no other issues until its cancellation. Now, if you even wonder what exactly was shown on the rest of the tape, there's not much else to be shown. The other two segments that were originally meant to be broadcasted into the episode has never been revealed, nor have any of the original producers and writers of this specific episode made any remote kind of mention of such. Not like they could anyway. They kind of had a bit of a gag order thrown on them to make sure of it, that they were never allowed to speak about this episode. How that's possible, I don't even know. But then again, though, corporations have a lot of power on their hands, and this is just one of them. And as for outrage and everything else like that, like I said before, complaints died down rather quickly. Whether it was through various payoffs or legal threats or a combination of the two, I can certainly say that PBS Kids did a damn good job at covering their tracks as well. They certainly did. That's without a doubt. In fear and surprise, as your eyes widen, your mouth goes dry with each battered breath. You try to scream, your mind begs to leave, glued to your computer screen. The killers they slash, the tapes burn and crash. The cartridge you bought will be your final haunt. The rituals of hate will seal your fate. The tears you shed will be from the fear-gripping horde-driven nightmarish gore-filled, terrorizing, hateful, burning, violent, rage-inducing, knife-slashing, blood-splattering, silent screams. Only time will tell if you will escape this online hell. Your horror-filled obsessions will come with its own regressions. Your pathetic screams will not be heeded in any way, because your nightmares will come at any day.